The clock on the mantelpiece has just struck 7:30, and you stand before the tall mirror in your dressing room, watching the candlelight move across the fabric of your evening coat like a slow tide retreating from shore. The coat is black, deep and absolute as the November sky pressing against the windows. Your valet, Thomas, moves behind you with the quiet efficiency of a man who has rehearsed this ritual 1,000 evenings. Adjusting the white cravat at your throat, smoothing invisible creases from your shoulders, pressing a faint crease into place with the warm flat of his palm. You say nothing. He says nothing. This is its own language. Outside, London breathes in the particular way it breathes on cold evenings, a low damp exhalation of coal smoke and river mist that seeps beneath every door, clings to every curtain, and settles into the folds of every garment left too long near a window. You can smell it now, even here, even behind the walls of your Mayfair townhouse with its fires burning in every room. The city is never truly outside. The city is always somehow within. You turn slightly, and the candlelight catches the gold chain of your pocket watch where it loops across the waistcoat. A watch that belonged to your father, and before him to his father. You do not open it. You never need to know the precise time. You need only to feel its weight, a small and solid reminder that the evening ahead has its own particular gravity. The room around you is everything the age has conspired to produce. Walls covered in deep Prussian blue damask, a dressing table crowded with silver-topped bottles and ivory-handled brushes, a Persian rug whose colors have softened with the years into something warmer than beauty, into familiarity. A fire crackles behind the grate with low, satisfied conviction, throwing amber shapes across the ceiling that drift and reform like thoughts not yet spoken. Thomas holds out your white gloves and you draw them on slowly, finger by finger, the fine kid leather cool against your skin before warming to it. There is something in this gesture, in the deliberate, unhurried drawing on of gloves before an evening, that feels like a kind of armor being assembled. Not against danger, precisely, but against the world's capacity to reach you too directly. You glance once more at the mirror. The man who looks back is composed, contained, entirely correct. And somewhere beneath the black coat and the perfect cravat, beneath the gold watch and the white gloves, something quieter waits. A curiosity, perhaps, or a weariness, or simply the accumulated sensation of having performed this ritual so many times that the performance has become indistinguishable from the self. The staircase awaits. The evening awaits. And London, beyond those tall sash windows trembling faintly with the passage of carriages on the street below, is already alive with its cold, magnificent indifference. You descend. The staircase unfolds beneath you in a long, graceful curve, its mahogany banister cool and smooth beneath your gloved hand as you descend. The house is 3 stories of carefully maintained consequence, every picture frame level, every lamp trimmed and burning at precisely the right height, every surface reflecting back the amber warmth of gaslight that has, in recent years, replaced the older candlelight in the public rooms, though you confess a private preference for the softer, more uncertain glow of flame. Gas is efficient. Flame is alive. You pause on the landing where a large oil portrait hangs, your grandfather, rendered in the formal manner of his age, his expression carrying that particular Victorian blend of authority and melancholy that seems to have been considered, in those years, the appropriate countenance for a man of standing. His eyes follow you, as they always have, with an attentiveness that feels less like surveillance than like recognition. You nod, almost imperceptibly, in the way one acknowledges a familiar presence, and continue down. The drawing room has been prepared with the kind of precision that belongs entirely to your housekeeper, Mrs. Alderton, a woman whose understanding of arrangement borders on the philosophical. Fresh flowers, white chrysanthemums this evening, stand in a tall vase near the window, their cold fragrance threading through the warmer notes of wood smoke and beeswax polish. The furniture is arranged as it always is before guests. 2 Chesterfield sofas facing one another across the hearthrug, the low table between them bearing a silver tray, a crystal decanter of sherry, and glasses that catch the firelight with a quiet, satisfied brilliance. You cross to the window and look down at Grosvenor Street below. The scene is one you have witnessed 10,000 times, and yet it retains, even now, a faint capacity to arrest you. The carriages moving through the lamplight, the horse's breath rising white in the cold air, the figures on the pavement moving with that brisk, purposeful London stride that speaks of people who know exactly where they are going and consider time a personal insult. A lamplighter works his way along the far side of the street, his pole raised like a conductor's baton, touching flame to flame in a slow, unhurried procession. Behind you, you hear the soft percussion of the household preparing. The drawing room door opened and closed by a housemaid carrying something. You do not turn to look. The distant, muffled sound of the kitchen several floors below, where your cook and her 2 assistants are engaged in the serious commerce of the evening meal. Dinner will be at 9. Your guests are expected at 8. There is time still for this particular quality of stillness. You pour a small measure of sherry and hold the glass without drinking it, simply feeling its weight, the faint warmth of the liquid visible through the cut crystal. The fire settles with a soft collapse of coals, and for a moment the room contracts slightly, as if exhaling, and then expands again into its accustomed dimensions. This is the hour you have always found most legible, the interval between the day's obligations and the evening's performances, when the house is fully itself and you are permitted, briefly, to be simply a man standing in a warm room, listening to London pass outside. The bell at the front door sounds low and resonant, somewhere below. Your guests have arrived. They enter in the way that people of your world always enter, with the particular grace of those who have been taught, from earliest childhood, that arrival is itself a performance requiring quiet mastery. Lord and Lady Ashford come first, followed by the Honourable Mr. Cavendish and his wife, and lastly Sir Edmund Hale, a man whose conversation you value above almost any other in London, for the rare quality of his silences as much as his words. Thomas receives their coats and hats at the door below, and by the time they ascend to the drawing room, they are already fully themselves, composed, warm, carrying with them the cold air of the street like a faint perfume of the world outside. Lady Ashford moves toward the fire immediately, drawing off her gloves finger by finger in precisely the gesture you performed not an hour ago in your dressing room, and you recognize in it something that moves you obscurely, the way the same rituals pass through all of you like a common language, unspoken and entirely understood. Her gown is deep burgundy silk, the color of old wine held up to candlelight, and at her throat she wears a cameo brooch on a black velvet ribbon that you have seen before but notice now with fresh attention, the carved profile pale as ivory against its dark ground. The room fills with voices and the soft percussion of crystal, sherry poured and offered, received with small sounds of gratitude, the fire worked briefly by Lord Ashford, who is the kind of man who cannot stand before a fire without attending to it, as though fireplaces are his personal responsibility. You find this endearing, as you have always found it endearing, and say nothing. Conversation moves in the way conversation moves in these rooms, obliquely, gracefully, touching subjects the way a hand trails in water from a slow-moving boat. The new exhibition at the Royal Academy, The Unseasonable Cold, a recent performance at the Lyceum, which Sir Edmund attended and describes with the measured enthusiasm of a man who rations his praise carefully, knowing its value depends upon its scarcity. Mrs. Cavendish laughs at something her husband says, a low, genuine laugh that carries a warmth entirely distinct from social obligation, and in the moment of that laugh the room briefly becomes something other than a performance. It becomes, for just that breath, simply a gathering of people who are glad to be together in a warm room on a cold night. You observe all of this from your position near the window, contributing at intervals, the sherry glass still in your hand, the city still moving in its indifferent procession behind the glass at your back. There is a quality to these evenings that you have spent years trying to name and never quite managed, something between contentment and longing, between presence and the awareness of presence, as though the most vivid moments of your life are always accompanied by a faint, simultaneous grief at their passing. Dinner is announced. You lead your guests through the double doors into the dining room, where the long table has been set with the full ceremony of the house, white linen pressed to severity, silver polished to a brightness that seems almost aggressive, crystal glasses ranked with military precision, and at the center of the table, 3 low arrangements of white flowers whose fragrance will gradually deepen and sweeten as the evening warms around them. You take your chair at the head of the table. Candlelight, you have always insisted on candles at dinner, gas be damned, falls across every face with that ancient, democratizing warmth that makes all faces, for a moment, look like portraits of themselves. The first course arrives in silence. The evening opens like a flower, into its fullest and most careful bloom. Dinner retreats by degrees, the way all good things retreat, slowly, course by course, conversation layering upon conversation until the table has become less a place of eating than a place of existing together in the particular intimacy that only candlelight and wine and the lateness of the hour can produce. The salmon has given way to roast pheasant, the pheasant to a saddle of lamb, and now the dessert course stands before you. A delicate arrangement of sugared fruit and cream that nobody seems especially hungry for, but which everyone regards with the benevolent attention one gives to something that has arrived at precisely the right moment. Sir Edmund is speaking about time. Not clocks or calendars, but time as a quality of experience. How certain evenings seem to expand from the inside, to contain more hours than they were assigned, while others collapse without warning into memory before you have quite finished living them. You listen with the particular attention you reserve for ideas that arrive already fully formed, as though they were waiting somewhere just beyond the boundary of your own thinking, requiring only the right voice to call them into the room. Lady Ashford is watching the candlelight. You notice this without remarking upon it, the way her gaze has drifted from the conversation to the nearest flame, which burns with a steady, almost deliberate stillness in the windless room, its reflection doubled in the polished silver of the candelabra beside it. There is something in her expression that you recognize, though you could not say from where. A kind of quiet, private reckoning, the face of someone briefly returned to themselves after a long excursion into the social world. The men remain at the table after the ladies withdraw, and port is poured with the gravity that port deserves, dark, almost black in the candlelight, fragrant with something that smells, always, to you like the accumulated patience of years. Lord Ashford produces a cigar case and distributes its contents with the generosity of a man who understands that small gestures, performed with full attention, carry their own dignity. The smoke rises in slow, contemplative columns toward the ceiling, and the conversation becomes, as it always does at this stage of an evening, more honest, not confessional, never that, but quieter, stripped of the performance that the earlier hours require. Later, when the carriages have been called and your guests have reassembled in the hall below, drawing on coats and gloves with the somewhat reluctant efficiency of people returning to the cold world outside, there is a moment brief, unrepeatable, when everyone is simply present in the same space, not yet departed, no longer quite arrived, suspended between the warmth of the evening and the dark of the street. Lady Ashford pauses at the door and turns back, not for any particular reason, and smiles. Not the social smile of the drawing room, but something smaller and more genuine, the smile of someone acknowledging, without words, that the evening was worth the effort of existing. Then they are gone. The door closes. The house reassembles itself around its silence. You stand alone in the entrance hall for a moment, listening to the sound of the carriages diminishing down the street, hooves on wet stone, wheels turning, the whole mechanical poetry of departure, until the city swallows the sounds entirely and there is only London, breathing its low, cold, dark breath against the windows. Thomas appears, as he always appears, at precisely the right moment, and takes your coat without being asked. You climb the staircase slowly, one hand trailing the banister, passing your grandfather's portrait without looking at it this time, though you feel his presence as you always feel it, not oppressive, simply continuous, the way the house itself is continuous, the way the city is continuous, each generation adding its particular weight to the accumulated silence of the rooms. In your dressing room, the fire has been banked low for the night, its light now a deep, breathing red rather than the bright amber of the earlier hours. The mirror returns your reflection. Coat removed, cravat loosened, the evening's careful architecture beginning its slow dissolution. You look at yourself for a moment with the curious detachment that comes only at the end of long evenings, when the performed self has stepped aside and left something quieter in its place. Outside, London continues. It will always continue. Its carriages and its lamplight, its coal smoke and its cold river, its 10,000 drawing rooms burning with conversation, and its 10,000 dark streets receiving the silence between them. You are one warm room in all of that immensity. One evening in the long accumulation of evenings that the city has witnessed and will witness, indifferently, long after this particular candlelight has gone cold. You extinguish the lamp. The darkness is immediate and total and somehow kind,